Hello there, today is recapping day 53 of working on a currently untitled project, so let's hop right in. So yesterday was another fairly slow day. Most of what I did was I added in damage values uh, to each of the projectiles, so now damage can be set on the projectile itself. The damage values from the SO weapon data directly are just gone, which, now I can actually set individual damage values for each of the Starburst projectiles, which is very nice. What they should be, still not sure, but initial stubs. And I also added in the radius for explosions, or max scale. Maybe I should rename that if I inherently called it radius, or intuitively called it radius, but named it max scale instead. I also reworked the beam into being a continuous projectile, so rather than having a damage zone on here like it did previously, it's now just a projectile that is, bespoke for this particular type of projectile. I'll get more into that in the rambles. I think I should do stuff like this a bit more. But yeah, now that means that the damage can actually be set via the properties in the SO weapon data rather than having to go over to the projectile still. I shifted all the actual projectiles so that they now are, so the origin of the projectile is here, and it's just shifted forward some. It doesn't show because this is like, yeah, there we go. If you set it to the pivot, then it'll show. This is something I probably should have done from the start. I think this is more correct, or at least more what I want. That way the back end of the projectile doesn't start inside of where it's starting, or where it spawns from, rather. So this seems better. So I just did that for all the projectiles. And I added in stub VFX for all the there they are. For all the different types of projectiles that need them. They're basically the same particle effect, just different colors. Very straightforward, but hey, I'm just getting some stuff in to start with. So fairly slow day. Didn't get much done again. I am starting to feel better though, so I'm hoping that that's going to shift today, and maybe I'll just work through the weekend. I'm not sure. Normally I take tomorrow and the day after that off, but we'll see how I'm feeling, and maybe I just go to work those days because I didn't do much this past weekend. I'm starting to feel better. I'll make that decision sometime tomorrow, I think. Or at the end of today, maybe. Yeah, so if you want to listen to me ramble, feel free to stick around. If you want to click off, feel free to go ahead. That's all the core stuff. So some notes. I would like to refactor the charger tank weapon, because right now the charger tank weapon is directly on the charger tank itself, and it's not an actual like weapon, which means that the data is split up into multiple places again, and like this is like, it's fine, but I'd rather that this be like an actual proper weapon. So the question is, how do I do that? Like, what's the best way forward on that? And maybe like the best way is like having just a weapon and not like a specialized type of weapon, and then the treasure tank script itself, it just deals with, because this needs to know, hey, if this was the shield collider specifically, that I should also, like, yeah, it just makes more sense that way out there. I know it's sort of like grouping these three together, but then this one, like, yeah, I don't know. I think I could understand either one. I'm going to keep it as it is right now. Like, no, I'm going to do this. This is just going to be. Well, I could just do this. This makes enough sense. Um, but because it needs to know, like, oh, you know, whether it's the shield collider specific, you know, if it needs to be the shield collider specifically that collides, for these functions to be run. It does make sense for this to be bespoke, but I could just no. That is perfectly doable. I don't know. I need to think on this a bit more. And this might be something that I deal with today. Is sorting out this sort of thing and just making this into a proper weapon. Yeah, I'll give it some more thought, but it'd be nice to have this be a proper weapon rather than just sort of like an add-on to behavior. It would be nice to sort of just sort of like generalize all the different types of weapons. Anyways, another note. This only occurred to me earlier. Oh, well, this needs to reload, so it'll be a moment. But the gravity wall is split into two different components: the projectile part and the gravity wall part. This means that the gravity well stuff isn't actually accessible over here. You have to go to the projectile to access the min strength and max strength of the gravity well, which is not ideal. So it would also be nice to be able to manually control the radius of the gravity well from there as well. You know, all that jazz. I think this gets back to what I was saying about, like, I made a bespoke class for, like, the beam, and I think that was the correct decision, is, like, just making bespoke classes. I think I think that's the correct path forward for this, is just making more bespoke classes that are just, like, specifically tailored to that specific thing, and, you know, it doesn't do anything else, and that's going to be okay. I have a tendency for this sort of thing to just generalize stuff, and I think that's a flaw. I think that's a mistake. I think that's going to just yield more problems than solutions. I think the correct answer is just, for each individual thing, make an individual thing when necessary. Like, railgun and linear projectile can both, you know, be the same thing because they are both physical projectiles right now. Though the railgun, I'm planning on changing that very soon. But like the shotgun is a physical projectile. That just sort of makes sense because its behavior is the same. But for like the railguns, I'm going to swap that into like basically a hit scan weapon, and it might penetrate enemies, it might ricochet between enemies, and so I'm going to make a completely custom projectile script for that. And I should do the same thing with the gravity well as I did with the beam, and so on and so forth. And you know, I should stop trying to like generalize everything, you know, like, oh, gravity well, like, don't get me wrong, like, this could be useful at some point, but it makes sense for it to be sort of collected all together. As long as I'm using a system like this, with the subobject property data. That, or I need to allow for multiple subobject properties to exist, and this needs to be like projectile dot physical projectile, and then I need to have like projectile dot gravity well, or whatever it was called. Yeah, gravity well. That is another solution. Both would work. But yeah, it's okay if things aren't really reusable. That's just going to be okay on this project, I think. I think there isn't going to be so much stuff that this is going to be an actual huge issue. I think that I think just making bespoke stuff each time is going to be just fine. I know I keep saying bespoke a lot. That feels weird to keep saying over and over. But yeah, it works. The last thing, for today, is that I discovered that the impact effects are still buggy. Yeah, as you can see, they are splashing behind the player right now, which is not intended. This seems to be a bug with the player model specifically. I can't get it to reproduce on the other models. Or at least I haven't as of yet. You know, so, eh. I suppose that doesn't mean that can't happen, it's just that I haven't... Well, I guess... that might have been that happening just a bit over there. I think it has to do with the irregular surface that the player is, because, you know, the player is, this weird triangle shape, you know, or pyramid shape, you know, angling down like that. I think that might be bugging out the logic some. Not really sure, haven't debugged it as of yet. I only found that last thing last night, basically, when I was just testing out the different impact effects for the different weapons, and making sure that the enemies looked fine. Yeah, not great. Not ideal. So not quite back to the drawing board exactly, but, you know, just need to debug a bit more. So that'll be another thing to take care of. Anyways, that's all for now. If you have any comments, questions, ideas, or anything else on your mind, leave a comment below. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.